Hi, Mikey Pung here, and I'm glad you're with me if you are. Um, I uh, I want to finish this little series that I began this past month now. We're into March. Um, and I want to do it. I thought seriously about why do I want to do it? Does it make a difference? Maybe it doesn't matter. But here's ultimately why I do it and why I want whoever it is that's watching this to know why I do it. It's because I have come to know my own heart, and my own heart has told me in connection with the rest of this great creation, a connection with spirit expression all around us, that the essence of everything is love. And I do this because it's my expression of love, no matter who listens, no matter how many people listen, it doesn't matter. It's my expression of love. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to end this because I was dealing with the book Martin Maya and Me that I wrote. Um, and I've gone through some of the things that they wrote and read parts of the chaps of a couple of chapters that I have in the book. And I'm going to read a little bit from near the end of it. I started out with a story earlier on a couple weeks ago about an experience I had when I was 20 years old in 1974. And I want to end with a story that I had not too many years after that, but it's still a story and a few other little things that I don't go into, but still part of my story. And I want to encourage you, if you have stories that you want to voice, write them down. Share them with your family and friends. That's where a lot of this starts. Um, and see what happens from that. Listen to your own heart. I'm going to read this now. After going through, well, let me just say, the last couple of days, I've gone through Maya Angelou's poem, a couple of parts of it on the Pulse of Morning. And I'm probably going to end with a little quote from that today, the very end of her poem. But ultimately, Dr. Martin Luther King had a story, Dr. Maya Angelou had a story, and each of us have stories. Some of them are perhaps more impactful on a larger scale. It just doesn't matter as long as they're stories of who we are and of how we feel. And that ultimately it creates connections. Dr. King said that we are all uh, that we are all in this inescapable web of mutuality, that we are bound. So why do I care? Why do I care about other people? Why do I care about myself and my relationship to other people? Because I'm love and their love and your love. So here's my story. This is the afterword to the book, actually. I'll probably skip a little bit, but this is what I said. I began this book with a story from my past. Maya raises this sense of story in her book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, in which she says, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. I hope you heard that. The beauty of superhero thinkers and difference makers lies in their ability to tell their stories that reflect and represent the stories of a large swath of humanity. It does not matter if that occurs only in families or on a national level. We should know and tell our stories. All of us have them. We live stories every day. We are the story. We each express story in our own unique way. Martin and Maya tell powerful stories, stories with which many identify. I'm not Black, but I identify in many ways with their stories. While I have not known what it feels like to be oppressed, ostracized, and hated because of my skin color, I have experienced the emotions resulting from such in a small way, a small taste of which I had that night in 1974 at the Boogie Shack. That and other times when I was involved in situations where I felt the bite of bigotry, when I was counseled by church elders to not be in a serious relationship with an Oriental girl I was dating, or when I was chased for publicly holding hands with her by a drunk guy, or when an African American girl and I, during freshman year of college, decided we would not survive the ridicule of dating one another based on the reactions of peers in class to our friendship. What I do know for sure is that Dr. King would have welcomed sitting down with me and hearing my story, just as I have been transfixed with his. His hope was that polar opposites would be able to join hands, eat at a table of fellowship, share, and value one another's stories, and rise from that table in a new relationship. That begins a process where we may work together to face challenges and actually enjoy one another's company, not to mention creating change. I would share one more story here before I end. I don't remember the exact year, but in my 20s, I was still involved with a church group like the one I mentioned in the preface. One young African American man asked me if I could help his brother study for his GED, the high school equivalency diploma. His brother had served some months in prison and desperately wanted to turn his life around. My friend, his brother, could have done that, but, well, brothers studying together just wasn't working for them. Transportation was an issue, so I went to their house. This provided me with one of many cross-cultural experiences and one I will not forget, not because the family was so different or that I was so different, but because the spirit of the interaction was so different. I spent every Sunday for a couple of months at their household. That included 3 generations, maybe 4, because I never figured out who a few of the little kids actually were. Henry, the young man, was 19 at the time. We worked through the study book together. We shared and laughed about how ridiculously useless some of the questions and concepts were. He shared other things with me too, like a group that pursued him in prison, one that was dedicated to eradicating white people. He told me in all sincerity that he feared them. However, because of their literature and talk, he feared me more at first, and whites in general. Perhaps it was my idealism, but more likely my naivete that just pushed me ahead as if our relationship was totally the way it should be. I didn't say the words, but I simply acted on the basis of friendship. Henry's grandparents must have recognized that, and I am positive they were much wiser than me. They wanted to make sure after the first week that I would work every Sunday with Henry so I could share their big Sunday dinner with them. We had a lot more in common than probably any of us thought, and we laughed profusely. Henry passed his GED test. He came to some of our little church meetings, although that was never a goal of mine, but I was glad he did. And I want to just put out one little caveat here. This next little bit I'm going to read, I'm not involved with that kind of group anymore, but it was still sincere at the time. And it was still an expression of my developing love. Henry asked me to baptize him, which I did. And that wonderful, loving, raucous, extended family of his were all there, little kids and all. By the way, I was not a paid minister or church worker. I was simply a friend. Henry learned from me, but more than that, I learned from him. I learned the fear that results from lack of communication, lack of understanding, and lack of acceptance. Before he told me the things that he told me, I never understood why people would fear somebody like me. I learned a lot. And I learned we can live in different cultures and appreciate and enjoy each. I learned trust can be built on both sides, and I had to learn to trust as much as Henry did. I learned from his family that we can sit around a table of fellowship and lifelong good may be the result. Despite some good-hearted disappointment and laughter when I told them I just couldn't eat chicken feet, they were delighted I had grown up eating poke salad, mustard greens, and lots of black-eyed peas, which were staples for them in the summertime, and I love Southern cooking. Little experiences like this can presage great change, even if it would be only in my life. I would encourage you, when you have the opportunity to engage with others, do it. Just do it. Ultimately, change occurs when individuals make up their souls and minds that ego has little place in controlling and guiding healthy relationships. Although it can warn us about unhealthy threats, ego has no place in setting policies or writing legislation, except to counter ego's propensities. I know that, and I share what I can to promote love, peace, and understanding. Martin Luther King knew that, so I share my reactions to his letter from the Birmingham City Jail. He worked for social justice in the public sector. Maya Angelou knew that, therefore I share her poem on the pulse of mourning, recited at Bill Clinton's inauguration. She worked for healing and justice in our collective soul. Each of us may work to ensure freedom and enjoy fellowship. We shall all be doing, thinking, feeling, processing, experiencing, acting, responding, and interacting based on heart energy. Simplicity. Sometimes it's sitting at lunch counters. Sometimes it's having meals together, laughing together, working together. All of this inequality, love, and the purpose, which is love. Greeting one another with a friendly, easy, good, good morning. Now that's exactly what I would like to read is the very end of Maya Angelou's poem. And this isn't, I don't copy more than a line or two at once in the book, but this is the end of it. She looks at a rock, a river, and a tree, and what they represent and what we can learn from nature because again we are all interrelated, even a rock, a river, and a tree. We are all part of this. We all have spirit essence and all have love as that essence. So this is the way, after going through the history of the ugliness that is there. And again, please, I encourage you to read her poem. It won't take you more than 3 or 4 minutes at the most. Read On the Pulse of Morning. But here's the way she ends it. Each new hour holds new chances for new beginnings. Do not be wedded forever to fear, yoked eternally to brutishness. Stop fighting one another, she says. Stop fighting nature. Stop doing unnatural things. To hate is unnatural except to ego. The horizon leans forward, offering you space to place new steps of change. Here on the pulse of this fine day, you may have the courage to look out and up on me, the rock, the river, the tree, your country. No less to Midas than the mendicant. Socioeconomic status means nothing, whether you can turn everything into gold or whether you're a beggar on the street corner. The offerings that nature teaches and shows us, the essence of love that we each are, has nothing to do with socioeconomic status. No less to you now than the mastodon then. Here on the pulse of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out and into your sister's eyes, into your brother's face, your country, and say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning. Social change, social justice can begin with, does begin with us realizing in our hearts who we are. And that means we can understand who everybody else is, who the other is, who those who are so different and so unlike us. We are the same at our very core. We just express it differently. And that's the beauty of being here. And to try to force others to not be who they are is hatred. It's not love. And then the change begins with something as easy and simple as looking at your neighbor, looking at whoever you encounter, and saying good morning. Until next time, love and peace.